Okay, so now we're going into section 4, and we're going to talk about the top 10 techniques for writing about places and times. Now, this is going to be a little bit of a summary, but I need you to really pay attention, make sure that this is all gelling, because this is where things start to come together. Once you really get this understood, then you're going to be able to be in the drafting mode and then fully editing to know what's going to make or break your memoirs. So here we go. Writing, obviously, about a place and a time in your memoir is like painting a picture, a 3D picture, but with words. Now, we've talked about taking something flat and giving it the dimension. It's the exact same thing. It allows your readers to experience the senses that they contain. So they can see it, they hear it, they smell, they taste, they feel the experiences in a more immersive and a vivid way. So here's some techniques that you can use to bring your setting to life. Number 1, use the sensory details. Use the sensory details so that your readers experience the place, the time, the whole environment of what you're writing about. Describe the sights, the sounds, the smells, the tastes, and the textures. Describe them in words and emotional words, both. Number 2, describe the culture and the social norms. By doing this, and this is kind of what I just talked about, when you describe the culture and the social norms of the place, like getting on birth control, by the way, I did look it up, and birth control, oral contraceptives, they were released in 1950, I believe it was. So yes, they did exist in the 50s, so my example is valid. But if you were one of those first people in the 50s to get on birth control, maybe you were married or maybe you weren't, but you were one of those women who went out on the limb and said, I'm going to take control of my reproduction. That was a movement. That was a whole life thing. And using the cultural norms and, all of that to describe the time really will catapult your personal story into, more of, like I said, a movement effect. Incorporate historical events. Now, this would be, talking about Woodstock or something, it's an actual event, something like, the space shuttle or the Berlin Wall. It's bringing all those individual things. Someone can say, okay, that was 1987, whatever the case would be. They would immediately then try to remember themselves in 1987, and they would be, even if they don't completely relate to you, they would relate your life then to their life then, and it's kind of exciting to get the reader's mind moving that way, because eventually they want to get right there with you. So help them with the steps on the way. Obviously, again, using dialogue, internal dialogue of your own or dialogue between you and others, to show your readers what your language was back then, and what was in your mind, and how did you act back then. Dialogue is extremely powerful. And then, as I always say, show, don't tell, because when you show, you're giving the readers the place, the time, instead of saying, it was a really bad time to be a woman in the 50s. Whatever it is you felt, color that, give it depth. Use metaphors and symbolism. Use humor, because as we've always talked about, the use of humor is very important to break up the tense moments, but also sometimes people just want to laugh. So let them laugh, give them the happy moments, as well as the stressful or the obstacles that you had to come through. Use research, and this is really important. You may not think, well, you might say, it was my life. Obviously, I don't need to research my life, but you do, because what you recall may be different. And, I can give examples of times where I thought I totally knew, and I would have sworn, let's say the movie Footloose. Footloose came out in 1982. I just made that up. But I might swear that it came out in 1982, but if I Googled it or YouTubed it and found out that it was wrong, because all my memories of what I thought was 1982 were tied up in that movie. When you actually do the research, and maybe it was 1983, maybe it was 1979, I don't know, it wasn't, but doing that research confirms, and it keeps you from giving bad information of historical events, because if you give bad information of historical events, then your credibility is almost shot. Now, people will probably be forgiving, and they'll be like, yeah, they should have researched that. They should have verified that. So do the research, do the verification, but don't leave it out. Just do a quick verification. It's very important that you have those things in there. But if you're going to quote a date, make sure it's right. Number 9, use contrast. When you use contrast to create a more dynamic, interesting portrayal of the place and the time that you're writing about, it can help your readers understand the differences and the similarities between your experience and what was going on as a whole. Like let's go back to, I keep talking about birth control or divorce, but in a time where women were not allowed or were shunned on if they were on birth control or getting a divorce. If you talk about that, if you talk about, out of you and your 10 best friends, you were the only one divorced. You were the only one who didn't have 6 kids by the time you were 26, something like that. When you use that contrast of you against everyone else, and you give that emotion, then it's actually really going to help your reader understand, because they weren't there necessarily. They may be younger or older than the generation that you grew up in. And so it's important that you give that contrast to who was already there with you, so that they can understand how your life and their life, or their understanding of that time frame, would be different. And then, finally, use personal experiences. Now, obviously, this is your personal memoir, so you're going to use the personal experiences, but use them and don't be afraid. Even if it's talking about going for an ice cream with your dad, share those moments, share the feelings and the things that really meant something to you. Share how when he was gone, you still held on to those moments of going down to, Pop's Dairy Deli or something, and picking up an ice cream with him. Just giving that. Now, if there's a Pop's Dairy Deli somewhere, and if other people have gone there with their dad, you're immediately gonna just like, oh my gosh, yeah, I totally relate to that. So just remember that writing about your place and your time of your story, of what because most of us have been through, multiple decades, multiple generations, and your story could be about just this 5-year period of an 80-year-old life, whatever it is. So be very specific to what your story is, but use these techniques, really dig into the sights and sounds, the feelings, the emotions that surrounded that time frame in that place. And your reader is going to appreciate it, and you are going to get some love for it too. So now that you've got this, I promise you, you're really getting close to being able to just get through this. I do urge you to keep writing, your drafts and stuff, but go ahead and finish the course all the way through before you necessarily start building yours, because there is stuff that will come on later that you really should have that bigger view first. Anyway, definitely make sure you subscribe, and we will catch you on the next lesson.